What was the law concerning unsolved murder under the law of Moses? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Deuteronomy on Walking Through the Bible.
His word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Deuteronomy chapter 21. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 9. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Deuteronomy 21, beginning at verse 1. If anyone is found slain, lying in the field in the land which the Lord your God is giving you to possess, and it is not known who killed him, then your elders and your judges shall go out and measure the distance from the slain man to the surrounding cities. And it shall be that the elders of the city nearest to the slain man will take a heifer which has not been worked, and which is not pulled with a yoke. The elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to a valley with flowing water, which is neither plowed nor sown, and they shall break the heifer's neck there in the valley. Then the priests, the sons of Levi, shall come near, for the Lord your God has chosen them to minister to him and to bless in the name of the Lord. By their word every controversy and every assault shall be settled. And all the elders of that city nearest to the slain man shall wash their hands over the heifer whose neck was broken in the valley. Then they shall answer and say, Our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. Provide atonement, O Lord, for your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and do not lay innocent blood to the charge of your people Israel. And atonement shall be provided on their behalf for the blood. So you shall put away the guilt of innocent blood from among you, when you do what is right in the sight of the Lord. Having just finished talking about the rules of war in Israel, we now turn to a discussion about unsolved murder in Israel. We've already seen that if someone is murdered in Israel, the punishment for the murderer is death. But even as it is the case today, with all of our forensics and high-tech detection methods, it was the case in Israel that sometimes you simply don't know who murdered someone. Someone could be walking along and find a dead body in a field that shows signs of an obvious case of murder. What then? Was the body simply to be buried? No questions asked? No. Even though the passage doesn't say, I'm sure the first thing that would happen in that case is that it would be investigated. Just because nobody witnessed the murder doesn't mean the murderer could not be found. Other evidence might be able to be obtained that would prove who the murderer was. But the law of Moses' high bar of nobody being executed save on the testimony of 2 or more witnesses, without fingerprint or blood analysis, it was quite possible that a murder such as the one described in Deuteronomy 21 might go unsolved. The fact remains, though, a man's blood was shed. A person made in the image of God has died. Therefore, sin had to be taken care of. But without a guilty party, how would this be done? Well, the first thing that must be done is the elders and judges of the neighboring cities would measure the distance from the slain person to the surrounding cities. The city that was closer would have the duty of atoning for the crime. That city would have to supply a heifer that had not been worked or pulled with a yoke. This is similar to the instructions given for the purification laws using the ashes of a heifer that we discussed in Numbers 19. The elders of that city would then bring the heifer down to a valley with flowing water that had neither been plowed nor sown and break the heifer's neck. The speculation by some commentators like Hill and Delitzsch as to why this place was chosen was probably founded on the idea that the water here would suck in the blood and clean it away, and that the blood sucked in by the earth would not be brought to light again by the plowing and working of the soil. Whether or not this is true is immaterial, for it is where God said this was to be done. The priests were to be there when this happens, so as to ensure that all is done in accordance with the law. After the heifer was killed, the elders of that city nearest to the man who was slain would wash their hands over the heifer. They then would profess that they didn't kill the dead man, nor did they know who did. So they asked that the Lord would provide atonement for Israel and not lay the innocent blood to their charge. If Israel didn't do this, Israel would be condoning murder, which would be just as sinful as committing the murder itself. So this is why this ceremony had to be performed. Now, the elders simply saying these words over the heifer wouldn't atone for this blood, if in fact the elders did know who the murderer was, but were shielding him. It would only atone for the blood of that person who was slain if what they were saying was true. Otherwise, they were guilty of the blood, even though they might not have actually killed the person. I am reminded of Pontius Pilate washing his hands before the crucifixion of Jesus, saying that he was innocent of the blood of Jesus. Simply saying those words did not make it so. Pilate had the ability to release Jesus, but didn't, so he was just as guilty as those who brought Jesus to Pilate in the first place. What we have here in Deuteronomy 21 is a way for the blood of the innocent to be atoned for when the murderer was unknown, not as a loophole for a murderer to avoid being punished. If after this ceremony was completed the murderer was found, then they would of course be convicted and put to death, even though this ceremony had been performed. To us this ritual looks strange, but to God the blood of the innocent must always be atoned for all men and women are made in the image of God, and none of us deserved to be murdered. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Deuteronomy chapter 21, verses 10 to 17, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.